Hello everyone, and welcome to one of my first energy updates in 2026. Today, I would like us to speak about a couple of interesting subjects that have been widely spoken about in the political arena lately. And today's video will be mainly focused on Greenland. And why is it actually like the subject of interest these days? What is so precious about that place on the energetic level and not only? And how the subject of Greenland is actually connected to a couple of other things that have been happening in the world lately. And I also would like us to touch base on a very unpopular project, a secret project known as Project Anchor. From what I know, Project Anchor hasn't been really like widely spoken about because a person that originally started talking about it, I think they've, had certain connections that allowed them to get access to this type of information. Most of the videos about it are pretty much gone, so I would like to bring a little bit of awareness to what that is, how it is connected to a potential dimensional blending experiment that's going to take place in August of this year. And funnily enough, it's also connected to the eclipse. So I would like to take a note here before we start in order to avoid any kind of issues related to that. This video is purely theoretical in nature, so treat this information that I'm giving to you as a certain story, as a certain fairy tale. Obviously, what I'm talking about cannot be scientifically proven. So I'm just sharing with you a couple of theories that I was dreaming about, a couple of theories that came to my mind, but I think that they are interesting, and if you choose to take them as something that is real for you in your own experience, then I think you have the full right to it. So I prepared for us like a brief presentation pointing out the main topics of like what I want to talk about. Most of them are centered around Greenland, but I also want to kind of explain, especially to people that live in America right now, what's exactly going on with these crazy snowstorms and these really crazy weather patterns that are going on right now. So hopefully this video will give us a little bit of more awareness on some of these topics. So I'm going to share the screen and we are going to go through this presentation together. So, the topic for today is Mystery of Greenland and Project Anchor, and considering how eventful this year is, I will be probably doing quite a few different energy updates to just give you my perspective on what I think is happening behind the scenes. And as I said, if you choose to take it as your truth, go ahead. If not, then treat it as a certain interesting thing to listen to. Before I get to the presentation, I would like to invite any of you that might be interested to join my February live event called Reclaiming the Sovereign Field. We will be learning about releasing energy attachments, how different portals and openings are being created in the field, as well as we will talk more about the topic of possession, dark flowering, and how to assist others that may be struggling with an entity issue, since this is becoming quite a thing these days. So if any of you are interested to clear what doesn't belong to you and return to your strength and to your primordial blueprint, I highly encourage you to check out my website where you can find all the details and how to register for the February event. And now let's move on to Greenland. So I'm gonna start with just taking a note here because this is actually how I started finding out that there's something more about Greenland, and then a couple of more months later, it actually turned out that Trump is very much interested in acquiring Greenland after he was elected as a president again. So organically, Greenland is actually a part of the cathedral complex on the planet. If any of you don't remember what the cathedral complex is, I do believe I was talking about it a couple of times on my videos, Basically, we have this network here that you can see on the image, like this diamond-shaped cathedral that has like 5 core temples. And each one of these cathedrals is responsible for distribution of one of the elemental plasma currents. So in the center we have the ether element, and the ether cathedral mainly covers the North Pole as well as the Himalayas. Then we have the air element, which covers the South America. I do believe there's Chile and Argentina and other locations as well. Then we have the water complex, which is actually, it covers Scandinavia, and that includes Greenland too. Greenland is one of the 5 temples of the Water Cathedral. And then number 4 is the earth element, which is mainly Russia and Eastern Europe. And then number 5 is the fire cathedral, which originally was in the Middle East. Right now, it is located in Italy and Greece. It has been moved to another location last summer. So, Greenland represents temple-free, cathedral complex-free water element. It is one of the 5 temples on the planet that distribute the sun-free elemental water plasma flows throughout the planetary plasma body structure and to the individual forms of life. Just like the Amazonian rainforest is essential to maintain the good quality of air on the planet, that's why the Air Cathedral is located in South America, exactly for that reason. Greenland maintains the well-being of the waters on the entire planet. It holds 10% of all the planet's freshwater resources. So there is this energetic reality behind this, where Greenland actually, it almost like gives us this blueprint of a healthy water body because it maintained it in its original form. And at the same time, on the 3D physical level, it actually has very precious water resources, and it has a lot of other very precious resources that many forces now want to get to, but I will explain it in the further slides. So, in a way, Greenland, in its primordial form, it is actually one of the sacred water cathedrals, and many ancient civilizations were very much aware of it, and there's a lot that we can learn about our history if we were supposed to like look into what kind of remains of ancient civilizations we can find in Greenland, but we will also get to that soon. Due to its unique location, Greenland is one of the abyssal passages on planet Earth that link to the North Pole Ascension Passage and thus other probability dominions of Earth. So, not only Greenland is the water cathedral, but it's also very much connected to the North and the South Pole. I was explaining this in one of my previous YouTube videos where I was talking about the ice wall theory and how we actually live on a much bigger planet known as Aurora Earth. I will show this on the slide here. It's almost like on this image where there are 7 continents and 5 oceans of the net Earth that we know. And actually, there is much more to explore on our planet. But the reason why we cannot access all the other continents is because there is a certain frequency fence that manifests on the 3D level as an ice wall that surrounds our planet and doesn't give us full access to all the other probability dominions of Earth, let's say other continents that are a part of a larger planet that we reside on. If this kind of confuses you, I recommend you to go back to my latest video where I basically explain how this ice wall theory works more in detail. However, I guess that gives us enough background. So if we go back to this image, we can see that Greenland is pretty much connected to the North Pole. And there is a network of certain passages that actually allow us to get from Greenland to the center of the North Pole, where we have one of the ascension passages out of this planet. So that means that if there is a group that controls Greenland, they can control the whole ascension process. At least like when it comes to ascending out of the North Pole. There's other passages, but this one on the north has a very special significance because in organic circumstances, before any reversals came to place on this planet, the South Pole was the organic passage through which the souls enter the planetary life field of Earth. So that means that if you wanted to incarnate here as a soul and have a human experience, no matter where you come from, you would be entering through the South Pole, go to the core of the Earth through the so-called Euleion chamber, and in the Earth's core, you would be communicating with the planetary consciousness in order to receive conscious permission to be able to incarnate here. And once your whole experience was finished, once your incarnational cycle came to an end and you felt ready to continue your journey somewhere else, you were using the North Pole in order to ascend out of planet Earth to higher dimensions. So the North and the South Pole, as you can see, has a really big significance in here. And now, in context of Greenland, Greenland gives us the passage to the North Pole. So it is actually almost like one of the places throughout which we can achieve physical ascension. And since the gates are about to open in 2028, certain forces want us to prevent from accessing it. And in here, there's also a certain very interesting theory that I've been looking into. And now, we don't have to treat it like so literally, but we can just take it as a certain concept. The reason why it came to me is because a couple of days ago, I had a session with a client, and we've been basically doing some realignments with her solar body because it felt like many people's solar bodies are kind of picking up on that chaotic energy that, comes from these explosions on the sun that are taking place right now, and, like this crazy solar activity that's very intense and can be also like very exhausting for our bodies. So we were basically reclaiming the primordial blueprint of the solar template from the Jura Lake Conservatory, and then I had this intuitive nudge to just like bring that template into the Know Me seed, and what I saw is that there's almost like the moment you kind of enter the earth, like on a certain layer of Earth's mantle, I saw this place that kind of looked like many different caves, kind of like, you have like mountains and then caves inside of them and like tons of passages and kind of like these beautiful waters, very warm waters, like this kind of stuff. But if you think about it, that place, I saw that it's located inside of planet Earth, but it was still very bright. It actually felt like the colors were much more lively than on the surface of planet Earth that we know. And what I actually realized back then is that the reason why I felt like that solar template needs to be brought into the Earth's core is that this solar template started to pick up on another sun, another luminary, we can refer to it as luminary, that is actually inside of the Earth. Let's say it's a certain layer of Earth's core that emits this organic light, and I don't believe this has ever been actually fully discovered by the contemporary science. So I found this image on Facebook a while ago, and so it feels like another significance of Greenland is that if there is a free passage through Greenland and to the North Pole, then you can actually access passages that will take you to the inside of Earth, to these, let's say, inner Earth civilizations. So I'm just going to read an excerpt of a certain text that was attached to this image. And again, we treat it as a certain concept. The reality might be a little bit different, but I did see something like that was actually described in here. The earth is hollow. The poles so long sought are but phantoms. There are openings at the northern and southern extremities. In the interior are vast continents, oceans, mountains, and rivers. Vegetable and animal life are evident in this new world, and it is probably peopled by races yet unknown to the dwellers upon the Earth's exterior. And now, these could be human races, or this could be some completely different type of races. So there's a lot of like gossip around like a possible alien invasion, and probably like if we are imagining alien invasion, we think that like one day we will see some spaceships on the sky. Well, it doesn't have to be like that because they can just emerge from the underground. So what certain forces that want to take over Greenland attempt to do is to actually get in touch with these races that live inside of Earth for certain reasons, because they are actually much more advanced than we are on the surface, which is a little bit ridiculous, but that's how it is. Certain technologies have been taken away from us during the Tartarian reset a long, long time ago. So again, this is just a certain theory in here, but I would say that Greenland is almost like a key to accessing all these parts of the planet that we consider to be very, very mysterious and yet unknown. Another proof why Greenland is so significant is the structure of its mountains. We can see that most of them, even here, like on this image, which I think is a very good example, we can see that they have shapes of pyramids. And now these pyramids actually very much resemble the mountains that we can find in certain parts of the Himalayas, where we can see that they have this specific pyramid shape. These mountains represent remains of the ancient civilization that used to inhabit Greenland during the Hyperborean era. This civilization is very much connected to the Himalayan mountains that have the same pyramid-shaped mountain peaks. And Inuits that, let's say, are like certain indigenous races that live on the north of Canada and in Greenland too, they are actually like the ancient Hyperborean descendants of very specific Christic lineages that used to live in these mountains. I was actually quite surprised to see that these mountains looked so similar to the Himalayas, like also from the photos and from my own personal memories. It seems like the Himalayan civilization and the Greenland civilization were both interconnected with each other, and they were both pretty much like sacred gatekeepers. There's other interesting area that I would like to show to you here as we're looking into the mountains in Greenland. In here we have a mountain referred to as Umanak, or maybe you pronounce it differently, I'm not sure. I apologize if I made a mistake. Anyway, this mountain here, actually, if we were supposed to like literally translate what Umanak means, it means heart-shaped. So it almost feels like Greenland has one of the core heart meridians of the planet. In here, when I was looking at this image, I could feel that this somewhere in this mountain, there's definitely one of the, let's say, time portals or Stargate passages. And probably the people that live near this mountain have some kind of an incarnational connection to it too, because this place seemed to be like energetically, vibrationally attracting only the people that actually like resonate on a heart level with the spirit of this mountain. So this feels like a very precious area in Greenland that hopefully will remain in its organic form without anyone trying to change it or build anything that may block the energy of this mountain. And we also have something called the Sphinx of Greenland. It is a nickname used for rock and ice formations in the Geiki area that look like an Egyptian sphinx, tall like cliffs or crouching forms when seen from certain angles during flights over the ice. And I don't think it's really connected to Egypt, even though, like, let's keep in mind that, like, when we look at these different ancient civilizations, we realize that in architecture, they were often following similar blueprints. So that means that, like, in a way, in the past, we were all one civilization, one planetary nation that had a common history and a common architecture too. However, when it comes to the Sphinx of Greenland, I do believe this one is showing like um the toes. From my perspective, there's a couple of giants in Greenland, the giants that froze into ice and stone. And in a way, they are like representing this frozen consciousness of Greenland that right now is going through its own awakening. And next, let's take a look at the resources in Greenland. And this is actually an interesting matter, mainly for one reason. The estimated natural resource of Greenland equals approximately 200 billion US dollars. However, this number only applies to the resources discovered on the outer parts of the island. There's much more to be discovered in the middle. Because as you can see, even on this simplified map, or even on this next one that I want to show you, the resources are located only on the outside. They are showing us only like something that we can find on the coastal line. But the question is, what is here? What is underneath this huge wall of ice? And I actually do believe that there's many more precious resources and minerals that are located in the depth of the island of Greenland. And what many forces want to do right now is that they want to secure the ownership of these natural resources. And that's why, and probably what I also think is going on here is that there's a lot of different resources on the island that certain extraterrestrial races might be interested in. Because that was, for example, the case with Australia and Mesopotamia, even in the earlier days. The reason why there was this huge extreme lockdown in Australia a few years ago is because of the certain races that were actually very much exploiting the natural resources of Australia, but nobody's really talking about that. Anyway, as I said, this is all theoretical, so take it or leave it. Anyway, let's get to a more interesting part now. And I'm really glad that I managed to come across this image. It's like an actual photo taken from above. Even though I do believe I once watched a video of something like even more up close, but that video is pretty much gone. Anyway, there's something that's been discovered in Greenland, and maybe some of you heard about it. There's been like almost like something that looks like a spaceship, and it was discovered right somewhere in the island. And it is actually one of the main reasons why the US government wants to get the island. Once some of the ice started melting in Greenland, some people were really confused because they started to come across very ancient artifacts as well as very ancient objects. Probably many of you think that it is a spaceship. And I don't know, maybe at some point we're gonna discover it and we'll be able to fly to the cosmos. However, when I looked at this image and when I looked at a couple of other images, I do believe also at this one, it's like a satellite image that shows us this triangle-shaped figure, which is exactly that. This spaceship is actually not what everyone thinks it is. When I looked at it from above, to me it felt like it is a massive entrance to the underground facilities of Greenland that could potentially hold advanced technologies. So it's not really a spaceship, it's not like we will fly with it. But what I do believe was reported is that if there is like a plane flying over this interesting object, the plane is literally like being magnetized towards it, and it's almost like being pulled into it to the inside. So that's literally how you can fly and then find yourself somewhere underground. And I do believe there's many more objects like this in Greenland, which are almost like either remains of an ancient civilization that used to inhabit these areas and also lived underground to some extent, or these are actually like very secretly kept underground bunkers in which people could live in case of some kind of theoretical global catastrophe. There's different scenarios here. Certain forces intend to build multiple military bases in Greenland in order to create contact with various alien races that utilize the Greenland passages to enter surface Earth. And now this could include like the ET races from the outside, like from other galaxies, let's say, or other planets, or that could simply mean the races that live underneath the surface of the planet. Just like I explained it in one of my previous YouTube videos, we actually have 3 layers of life field on planet Earth. We have the underground layer, then the surface, and then the atmospheric layer. So there's much more to discover when it comes to our planet, and Greenland is almost like a key to that. A long, long time ago, around the time of Atlantis, the portals to Greenland were closed, meaning that in the past we would be able to just, go through that external icy layer, but then get a little bit more to the inside of the island. And then we would simply like keep walking until we would come across certain Stargate locations. And as usual, if we had the corresponding DNA codes to access these Stargates, we would simply be able to enter there and, explore the inner Earth or possibly other reality fields. However, these passages were closed a long time ago due to security measures, just like any kind of portal passages to inner Earth were closed after the fall of Atlantis, so that in a way, like, we became quarantined because there was too much interest from other races that wanted to almost like abuse the power of these passages. The only individuals that hold the actual energy codes and encryptions to access these stargates are the indigenous Greenlanders known as Inuits. So I have here like a certain message to the people of Greenland who might be listening, or maybe to some of you that know any Greenlanders. That whole voting thing, like if Greenland still wants to be a colony of Denmark, or if it wants to become a part of the US, or what it wants to do next, there is a certain contract behind voting, and that applies not only to Greenland, that applies to every single country on this planet. If, let's say, there is a presidential election in your country, and you have, like, let's say, 2 candidates to choose from. Well, whoever you're voting for, you're almost like contracting yourself with that person, and whatever they choose to do, whatever they choose to introduce in that country, you will have to follow it. You will have to obey it because that works as a certain form of a contract, and there's multiple rituals and magic done behind it. So sometimes, like if you want to avoid it, then it's better not to vote, or have that awareness in mind and clear any contracts on your own after you vote. Going back to the point with Greenland, what they want to do is they are basically going to try to contract as many people of Greenland as possible into voting for the US, because the point is that and that's extremely sad, actually. They do want to target the specific Inuit families and race lines that actually have the passage codes for the stargates in Greenland. So that's kind of what this whole targeting agenda is for as well. So if any of you want to do something in order to prevent this from happening, then keep sending the Eternal Protectorate, keep sending the no-missit frequencies, the flows of YhU-Rha to Greenland and to its people, because right now they are playing a very important role both on the 3D as well as the energetic level. And something that I came across, and I suppose it wasn't a coincidence, I think throughout the Christmas break, I was watching a movie called Greenland, which basically follows a family that's trying to reach safety as basically a very dangerous comet is approaching planet Earth. So, like a typical catastrophe movie scenario. However, what I found interesting is that there's certain things that were shown there, especially that in that movie, the only safe place where these people could hide was like a bunch of bunkers in Greenland. Like nobody knew about it before, and suddenly they were taken there in like really big airplanes. The second part of this movie was released in January of this year, so we can find an interesting synchronicity between the movie and the quest for Greenland. So, movies are always supposed to speak to people and to their consciousness. I will not reveal too much what was in that movie, that's not really my point. However, if you're interested to just take a look, I think it's quite worth it just for the awareness of it, because that movie is actually trying to expose quite a lot and trying to embed a lot into our subconscious. And now let's get to this very interesting subject, which is the project Anchor. And again, this is not scientifically proven. Um, this is not like official. This is just like conspiracy theories based, and I'm just again like presenting you my thoughts on it. So let's find out what Project Anchor is. And by the way, this image that you can see on the screen here, um, this is actually a military base of the United States in Greenland, a military base that has existed there, if I remember correctly, already from the 50s of the 20th century. Um, and interestingly enough, like this sphere, this huge sphere, it actually very much reminds me of like certain devices like the harp. They always have this kind of spherical structure, and there's like a lot of like laser beams coming out of them. So to me, it doesn't look like any kind of like tracking device. It's more like a certain broadcasting station. So, in conspiracy narratives, Project Anchor is described as an Earth frequency stabilization or control experiment designed to anchor a specific timeline, grid, or consciousness state into the planet. So, this is serious stuff. This is not just playing with timelines, this is actually inserting them into reality and making everyone fall into it. This is what Project Anchor is about. And now I'll give you a little bit of a more perspective on it and how it is connected to what they planned for the 12th of August. So there's like this kind of gossip, and most of the mainstream media are just like laughing about it really hard that apparently on the 12th of August there's supposed to be like this thing where Earth would lose its gravity for a few seconds. And this is when a certain window opens throughout which um, certain groups can perform like a time blending event. So it's kind of similar to maybe like the experiment Philadelphia that some of you heard about, or the Project Montauk. It's all based on like this time blending experiment, creating wormholes in time and all this kind of stuff, like literally playing with time like a tool. Well, there's a certain truth behind this. And in here, I'm just gonna share a little bit of like what this project is about, like more in detail, but I don't think it's gonna be as tragic, and like we don't need to get into any kind of apocalyptic mood here, so no worries. So, Project Anchor is intended to trigger a temporary suspension or distortion of gravity, cause people to feel weightless, dizzy, disassociated, or lifted, which I think will not be just a scientific event in this case, because people feel dizzy, disassociated when they are under magic. So I suppose there will be two things in place, like an actual experiment plus all the magic behind it that will kind of put like a collective spell on those who fall into it, of course. It marks a timeline anchoring event where reality is locked. So for a moment, like the reality kind of stops, time stops. And that kind of allows for like kind of like a certain window opens to almost like create a certain timeline blending link. And interestingly, it coincides with a planetary or solar alignment or like a certain artificially made alignment. In this case, on the 12th of August, we are going to be experiencing a full solar eclipse. So, not just that, also in terms of kilontic science, the period of like 8 to 12 of August, this is heat alone. This is the magnetic peak of the planet where the magnetic spiral of the planetary Merkaba field is spinning the fastest on the annual rate. So, taking that into consideration, that the planet is getting very magnetic, so it can attract things easily, we have the full solar eclipse and certain magical things planned on that date. Um, we are actually experiencing a very sensitive timeline. In fact, Project Anchor is related to creating the dimensional blending event with various timelines in order to create a link to the Metatronic Fall timeline, beginning a very tangible split taking place on planet Earth. So they will be actually already taking some parts of this planet into Abaddon. If some of you want more information of it, it's in the latest video where I talk about like the evacuation scenario and all of it. This actually very much applies to the current Greenland circumstances. Um, However, it will not be an apocalyptic scenario. So I just want to make it clear in here, I'm not talking about any disaster and I don't want to scare any of you. Thanks to the planetary YhU-Rha buffer zone, the Eternal Protectorate Field, not all of the areas on the planet will be affected. The more urea flows are anchored into the planetary grids by August 2026, the less damage will occur on the consciousness and physical manifested level. So again, it all starts with ourselves and how actually we can help the planet at this very sensitive time. So let's keep that in mind that we can actually make a big difference here and there could be no damage from this time blending experiment either. And now a couple of words on the snowstorms that are currently passing through the US. I pretty much find it to be quite an interesting dynamic because before we had quite an intense snowfall in Kamchatka on the east of Russia, and now we are experiencing something like this on a very large scale in the US. So from my perspective, and this actually applies to not just US, but what might be potentially happening to Europe in the future, this snowstorm is not organic. It is a test for the US nation to measure the damage, number of individuals prepared for such disaster, and the overall social behaviors. So it's not organic, it's being created as actually a certain type of a social experiment, just like it was admitted last week during the World Economic Forum that COVID itself was an experiment, a social experiment. Same case with the current snowstorms. They are supposed to measure how many Americans are actually prepared for conditions like this and how many are not. Because if we look at it from a different angle, what happens is that very often, when we watch like these, catastrophical movies like A Day After Tomorrow, 2012, or even Greenland, United States always falls apart. I mean, it always suffers the worst disasters comparing to the rest of the planet. And that is because it's a very vulnerable area and there's still a lot of unresolved curses from the um, colonialism era. So um, in here, when we are looking at this current snowstorm, I would say that it's pretty much testing how capable the nation is to survive, and I don't think it really is. Um, Something that might be happening in the future, like a small prediction that I've got, there There are many rich US citizens, usually from the social circle of the current leader of the United States, that are interested in purchasing land in Greenland, knowing that more disasters like this are expected to come. And if such disasters were to come, then they could just hide in their own bunkers. So that's why they also want to take over Greenland, because they know that it is almost like a safe zone to some extent. And I just wanted to share this here. These are the snowstorms that appeared in Kamchatka in the beginning of 2026. They don't seem to be that organic either. I mean, I guess we've never saw anything like this before. Um, to me, it feels like this specific weather pattern came from Alaska, from one of the HARP devices there. And there's obviously something that was hidden underground in the meantime, so because the whole surface got covered. So I just think it's a pretty interesting dynamic. So the last thing that I wanted to mention here in context of Greenland and the Project Anchor is that the mysterious objects that I showed to you in the previous slides can actually serve as potential amplifiers in August 2026 when the Project Anchor takes place, especially if the US manages to take over most of Greenland. Other particle accelerators such as CERN in Switzerland or TRIOMPH in Canada are expected to be used extensively as well. And the last topic that I wanted to talk about is the solar activity and the reason why some of us might be having quite of an emotional turmoil these days. High solar activity can light up the auroras and push big waves of plasma into Earth's energy field. Like the planet is being flooded with charged electric life force. When that pressure ramps up, everything here can feel amplified too. Emotions run hotter, systems get unstable, and collective timelines accelerate. So we often see intense geopolitical changes, sudden turning points, and power structures reshuffling fast. So that's why the situation in the world is so intense right now. It is all connected to the solar activity and how our solar templates are interacting at the same time. We have 4 eclipses that will take place in 2026. The first one is already on February 17th. That's when we'll have the Ring of Fire eclipse. Like the moon will cover the sun in a way where we see that ring. March 3rd is the Blood Moon eclipse, so the moon will turn red, which is like one of the worst energetic events, I could say. August 12th is the total solar eclipse, and that's when the Project Anchor is scheduled for. And August 28th is the deep partial lunar eclipse. These 4 eclipses take place in 2026, and they are directly linked with Project Anchor and the past eclipses that occurred throughout human history. Always linked to the Atlantean royal bloodlines, Egyptian Ra cult, Greek cult of Apollo, Romanian Saturnalia, and other associated rituals that trigger various geopolitical events and maintain power of the Illuminati forces on the planet. So these eclipses, the first 2 ones are meant to actually prepare the planet for the upcoming Project Anchor and the dimensional time blending event. So the more of the eternal frequencies are anchored on the planet by that time, the better for all of us. So this is everything that I wanted to share with you for today. I hope that this gave you some interesting insights. And I hope that it gives you like a larger perspective on what is actually happening behind the scenes. And again, this is an invitation for my upcoming February live event where we're going to learn actually something that I've never been sharing on any of my classes before. The material is brand new. And it's about clearing energy attachments, it's about learning about the possession effect, but most importantly, it's actually about clearing what doesn't belong to you and reclaiming your own sense of sovereignty. So thank you so much again to all of you for listening. I hope that this gives you some perspective on things. And as I said, I will be sharing more of energetic updates like this. I just feel like it is the right time for me to kind of start going deeper into things like that. So Thank you for being here, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your day or a wonderful rest of your evening, depending on where you are. And see you soon.